Okay, welcome everyone to this month's meeting of the Peer Support Supervisors Affinity Group. Today our topic is about wellness. So it'll be supporting peer support providers in intentional wellness practices, filling their cups so that they can support others. I know that we initially had planned to have trauma-informed supervision strategies today, but we needed to reschedule. Dania March will be here in May to provide that to us, and there will be CEUs for that. But she needed to change her schedule up a little bit. So we are pleased to be able to switch up topics and still provide CEUs and a topic that is so very important for peer support providers, as well as you as supervisors. Real quickly, our usual disclaimer that this is prepared for INTACT under our cooperative agreement with SAMHSA, and that the content does not necessarily represent the official views of or endorsement by SAMHSA. If there is anything that happens during the session, if there's any security issues, the session is going to immediately end, and it will not start on the same link. A separate email will be sent to everybody that has further instructions, a new link or a rescheduled time, that sort of thing. We also are very lucky that we're able to offer CEUs. Thank you to the University of Texas at Austin. So we are able to offer 1.5 CEUs for today's session for the professionals that are listed here. You do need to make sure that this fits with your licensing or credentialing board, that they do accept this. What you will get is a link will be put in the chat toward the end of the session. You do have to attend the whole thing, and it will be 90 minutes today. There will be a link that you can fill out a form in order to get your certificate that has the CEUs on it. Okay, we're going to dive into our presentation today. I'd like to welcome Dr. Molly Lopez and Dr. Natalie Fekoch. Both are in Texas, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves because they've done some pretty amazing things. But we are glad that you're here and able to share your expertise with us today. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you all so much. Natalie and I are super happy to be here with you today and excited for this opportunity. I'm going to share just a little bit about myself. I'll let Natalie do the same. So a little bit about me. I am a cisgender white female. I'm married. I have 3 children. 2 of my children have experienced significant mental health challenges over their lifetime. I live in the southern region, as was mentioned. I live in Texas, so have been a Southerner all my life, and have been trained as a psychologist and worked for over 20 years in the system of care space within our state. I bring with me an enormous respect for the work of family partners, family peer support providers, youth peer support providers, and just a real gratitude for the work that you all do every day. We have been striving in our state to really ensure that we've got a supported and a workforce that is paid as they should be paid, has opportunities for career growth, and that we've got a workforce that can actually meet the needs of our state. So I want to thank you sort of at the get-go for all of the work that you do every day. I'm going to pass it over and let Natalie introduce herself.
Thanks, Dr. Lopez. My name is Natalie Fekoch. My pronouns are she, her. I also, my husband and I have been married about 26 years now, and we have 3 sons, 2 of them also having experienced significant mental health needs and challenges through the years. My background is in public education. Started out as an elementary school teacher, became a professional school counselor, campus and district level administrator. Worked at the Texas Education Agency for a short time, and now serve as the school mental health lead at the Southwest MHTTC. As Molly said, I have an enormous amount of gratitude for each of you and the work that you do and the work that you lead on behalf of some of our most vulnerable youth, that we're working with, and super passionate about anything in the school mental health space, as well as overall wellness and self-care strategies. So it's truly an honor to be able to spend a short amount of time sharing some of the knowledge that Molly and I have gained through some incredible training that we've received with Dr. Amit Sood. So it's an honor to be here, and I'll turn it back over to Molly.
So a little bit about what we're hoping to accomplish today. Our goal is really to just help us better understand what I think many of us are experiencing and know through firsthand experience, and really just the level of chronic stress that's impacting us in multiple domains of our life. It's impacting us at work, it's impacting us in our home life and in our communities. So we're going to talk a little bit about why we are particularly vulnerable to burnout and to compassion fatigue and those issues. And then we're going to really strive today to share with you some practical, brief, quick things and intentional things that you can do to help build your own resilience muscles, help strengthen that piece of us, and then also to help see some of the ways that you can kind of share these things with your teams to help build a more resilient team that you work with as well. So as we start off, what I want to ask you to do is to say, I know you've put your names and your locations in the chat box, which is great. I'm going to ask you to say hello in a little bit different way. I want you to, in the chat box, tell us something that has lifted you up or lightened your step lately. Tell us something that's kind of brought you some joy, some energy in the chat box. Meditation and time outdoors. More outdoors. All right. The warm weather. Yes, that's definitely, we've had a beautiful day today. So it's great to get outside for that. Got to see my grandkids last week. They live a little bit away from Kristen and she got a chance to be with them. That's great. Dieting and losing weight. So a sense of accomplishment. That's awesome. Sunshine and reading. Having a chance to read. Awesome. Discovering how much I like roasted coconut tea with oat milk. Okay, that is unique. I like that. I bet some others are going to want to try that now too. Losing weight, getting out and walking more, getting some exercise. Either run raisin ice cream or rum raisin ice cream. I think it's rum raisin ice cream. Awesome. Daughter who started softball. Getting to be a part of that as a coach. Not feeling guilty for self-care. I like that. Going hiking, going to hockey games. All right. Seeing her, Rosa shares, seeing her daughter thrive after a really hard year. That's awesome. Grandbabies. Awesome. Walk with pets. Yeah. Oh, so many great ideas. Planting and growing. Those are great. All right. Thank you all for sharing that. I suspect we all may gather some ideas from each other through what we share and what helps bring us some energy. Okay. Um, I think we can all probably agree today that now more than ever, we are all feeling a bit exhausted, probably more than a bit. And that the folks that we work with, and maybe even ourselves, are feeling a level of burnout and fatigue that really goes beyond what we normally see within the profession. Um, it's important as we sort of dive in and start talking about this topic to think about that we can approach the idea of wellness and wellness in our workplace in a couple of different ways. We can approach it at the structural level as well as at the individual level. There are many things about our workplaces that are structured in ways that actually contribute to stress and to burnout. Many of us can probably identify some of those things in our kind of day-to-day work. It is critical for us to really think about how we can improve those structural elements in our organization to support the wellness of staff and reduce those burdens that may be placed on the care provider workforce. And, as supervisors, you probably look for opportunities to call out those structural issues and make sure that leadership and others are aware of what may be leading to some of that unhealthy stress. At the same time, I think we have to recognize that we may not be in a role where we can eliminate all of those structural things within our environment, within our work that may be causing stress. And so we may also need to think about some other opportunities as well. And frankly, we may just not have time to wait for those structural issues to be addressed. So while I don't want to turn and focus on things that we can do to support our own wellness without recognizing that structural issues need to be addressed, I think there are some skills and some strategies we can learn as individuals, we can help our staff learn that can help us handle stressors in a better way while still working to reduce those stressors that may be in our environment and call them out to those who can make some of those changes. And what we're going to talk about today is really focusing more on things that we can do in order to be able to weather some of the challenges that may come, even if we have worked to create the healthiest workplaces that we can. We still know there's going to be challenges, right? They may not even be in the workplace, they may be in our personal lives, and those tools and the strategies that we can develop can help us weather some of those. So we're going to talk a little bit in some physiological realms today. So one of the things I want to talk about is that you really have two organs in your body that have the biggest impact on your resilience, and that is your heart and your mind. We know a lot about the heart. I am not an expert in the heart, but as a people, we know a lot about how the heart works by now. It's a fairly simple organ in what it does. We know how to make it stronger and healthier. A lot of people shared in the chat box things that they do to help make their heart stronger and healthier. And we even know how to fix some of the things that go wrong when our heart is not working the way it's supposed to. But as we think about the brain, we're really still in some of the early stages of kind of understanding it, of writing the owner's manual, really, about what our brain does. It's really complex. It's a big, complex computer processor. And while we don't know nearly everything we want to know, there are some things that we know about the brain that can help us improve how it's functioning. I want you to think a little bit about the first car that you got when you were a teenager or a young adult, sort of that first experience at car ownership. Mine, I will admit, was a Subaru. It was a little small Subaru car, and it was supposed to be red, kind of fire engine red, but it had been in the sun, in the Texas sun, for way too long, so it was kind of more of this orangey color. I was super proud of it. It usually got me where I needed to go. Sometimes my dad would follow me to make sure it didn't break down on the way. So it had its problems, but it kind of kept going. It was kind of the base model that I got as a young adult. It was working. Okay. Over time, though, I knew that I wanted to sort of get a better car that was more reliable, that was maybe a little less orange, you know, that fit my style a little bit better. I wanted to build my way up, work my way up. In the same way that I might do that with a car, we can also do that with our brain. We start with really what is sort of a base model of our brain. It works, it does some of the basic things that we want it to do, but just like our heart, we can actually strengthen it and we can build it to be that better model. I don't know what sort of great car you eventually wanted to get to. I'm not even sure what great car I wanted to get to, but let's say maybe the Mustang convertible of cars, you know, we can do that as well to start building our brain so that our brain is ready with the resilience we need when we have to face those challenges. Like I would not have wanted to take my Subaru car out onto the icy roads. It was not ready for that. But I want to be able to build and strengthen my brain in a way that I'm ready to handle those challenges like an icy road. So I told you that our base brain needs some work. It has some challenges. I'm going to share with you some letters if this works. There we go. Okay, so I want you to think what you think may be the top 3 challenges that our brain experiences. And the hint is they all start with an F. So put in the chat box what you think some of those challenges might be. Focus, frustration, fear, fatigue, fear, failure. All right. Look at you all. Okay, right, flight. Follow through. All right. False ideas. All right. Good job, guys. Okay. Family. Family. Okay. So what our top challenges are that we're going to talk about today are fear, focus, and fatigue. So you all got them. Good job. These are the top things that kind of are our brain struggles. What in our base model doesn't really work in the way that we might want it to work. So let's start with thinking about focus. So I don't know about you all, but when I'm doing things that are a little bit mundane or boring, my mind is wandering. There's a lot going on in our heads, right? We're thinking about what's going on at home, what we may have to do at work. We may be worried about kind of the taxes that are coming up to be paid soon. So our mind is going through all of that. And many of the times, these things that are going on in our heads are sort of the dark clouds, right? They're the things that we're worried about. And those dark clouds are drawing our attention away. It used to be that we had to be paying attention to the world around us really carefully because it was a dangerous world, right? We were perhaps going to have, dangerous animals come and attack us. So we were paying a lot of attention, a lot of focus, but that's not really the world we live in today. And while our brain is kind of continuing to scan for those things that are worrying us, it doesn't need to be outside. And so we turn that inside, right? If we start to focus on those things that are going through our minds that are worrying us, and instead of our focus being on our external world, we're focused more on our internal worries. I know that for me, sometimes I can be out, like, for example, I had an incident where this was a while ago, but I was driving my daughter to a play date in the neighborhood, taking her over to a play date to drop her off with a friend. And before I knew it, I was at the school in the neighborhood. There was nobody else there. It wasn't school time, but I had gone on my kind of straight path that I was used to doing. And I wasn't even thinking about where I was going, right? Because that driving had just become sort of not my area of focus, and I was focused in on other things. And I suspect many of you and the folks that you work with are thinking about those undone tasks that they have, the documentation that didn't get done and needs to be done, or things that may be going on at home. And it is one of those things that's going to keep going through our head and making it challenging for our brain to really focus. So what I have right here is a resting scan of the brain. It used to be that researchers thought that the brain, when it was at rest, would actually be quiet, right? That it would just be similar colors and a quiet brain. But that's not actually what brain scans show us. They actually show us that the brain is really active at rest. It is working hard at pondering all of those thoughts and worries and concerns. And that's kind of what this is showing. Resting our brain doesn't mean the same thing as resting other muscles, because our brain is continuing to work even when we're at rest. But in our focus mode, that is when we're able to really use our brain most strategically. So that is when we may be perceiving something novel, like a new picture that we haven't seen. We're thinking, wow, we're having just this kind of focused impact of that novel thing. Think about a time maybe that you have been so invested in something that you didn't even know that time had gone by, right? You were focused, you were in it, and time went by without even thinking about it. That's a time when you were really, really focused. I was trying to think through like what would be an example that I might share of this. And I've been doing, like many of you, a lot of walking during the pandemic. And my husband and I will sometimes go on walks at the end of the evening. And most of the time we're talking about what we did during the day. We're just kind of sharing those general thoughts, and we're walking, and it's a pretty distracted sort of, we do the same path every time, not a lot of novelty. But every once in a while, we'll end up in a conversation that is different than the other conversations that we're having. Maybe we're really talking about what we want to do, as we think about retirement, or just other things where we're really kind of connecting. And we can have made the entire walk, and I almost won't have known that we were walking because I was so engaged in that conversation, right? It was not the normal conversation we have every day. It was different. It was novel, and it was one that really made me feel connected to him. That was a moment for me of a lot of focus. Think about when we were young and learning to drive. So back in our 16 to 18-year-old age, learning to drive actually took a lot of our focus, right? You didn't want to have the radio playing. You didn't want to be in a deep conversation with the person in the car with you. You were really focused. You had to be watching the mirror and watching behind you and watching all of the dials. It took a lot of your focus. But over time, as we become an adult, it takes a lot less of our focus to do this, right? So here we've got just a little bit of room as a young person for our mind to wander. But driving as an adult, we have a lot of room for our mind to wander. What about other things that we do during the day, right? So here we've got our learning to drive, but what about eating, right? I don't know about you, but a lot of times, maybe the first couple of bites I pay attention to that. Is it something, does it taste good? Does it taste not so great? Does it taste different than I expect? And then after that, I probably don't really remember, right? It just kind of goes by. I'm just eating, right? And my mind is wandering. I'm sometimes maybe even multitasking and trying to do other things while I'm eating, and I'm not paying attention. Same with brushing your teeth. Like, we all know that we're supposed to be brushing our teeth for 2 minutes, right? But how many of you can think back to this morning and say, I know I brushed my teeth for 2 minutes, right? We're so used to doing it. It's just a part, our mind is thinking about what we're getting ready to do in the day, right? The same with even talking with a partner, like I mentioned. I might go and say a couple of things to my husband at the end of the day that are things I normally say. And if I were to ask him what I said to him, I'm not so sure he'd be able to remember, right? Because it was not novel, it was not new, it was just a part of our day. Okay, so we talked a little bit about focus. Now let's talk a little bit about fatigue. So that was our second thing, and how fatigue impacts our brain. So we know that there are two types of organs in the brain. There are the organs that get tired, and then there are the ones that just keep going, like our Energizer bunnies organs. If you think about your kidneys, you don't have to plan your day around needing to rest your kidneys. They're just doing what you need them to do throughout the day, throughout the night. They just keep going, right? But there are other parts of our body that do get tired that we have to plan to rest. If we are carrying around a 50-pound weight during our day, we're going to notice that our back is getting tired, that our shoulders are getting tired, that our legs may be getting tired, and that we're going to need to rest. Your brain is also one of those organs that gets tired as well. The thing that's different is that when we're carrying that 50-pound weight, our back has pain receptors that tells us it's getting tired. It tells us this is not okay anymore, I need to rest. Our brain doesn't have those same pain receptors. They're just not there. So we can't use the same cues that we normally do to tell us that we are getting tired. How many of you at the end of a 5 o'clock day feel wiped out? Feel just exhausted? Yeah, I see a few hands going up. I can't see everybody, but I know that that's true for me. And at that point, sometimes I say silly things. I do things that, oh, there we got some hands raised. Awesome. Yeah, it's hard, right? How long does it take for our brain to get tired, right? We should know that. What research tells us is our brain actually starts to get tired after 30 minutes of intense focus. And by 60 to 90 minutes, it is exhausted, right? So it really only takes us about 90 minutes for our brain to really feel fatigue. And what do we usually do during that time after we get to the point of fatigue? We may have some signs, right? We're starting to not make such good decisions. We go get coffee. We push harder. We really, try to focus in. We are not doing what our brain is telling us we may need to do, which is rest. But our brain, just like our other muscles, over that 60 to 90 minutes, it's building up neurotoxins in our brain, and it needs the chance to relieve those through different strategies. We're going to talk in a minute. I'm going to just introduce some of those strategies, and then Natalie's really going to tell you a lot more. But let's look a little bit about what the results are of our brain being fatigued. So as I mentioned, as we go up to 90 to 120 minutes, our fatigue is increasing. What that means for us is that we start to take longer to get things done. We have a slower reaction time. We also are not as good at the activities that we're doing, so our accuracy starts to go down. Additionally, our performance, like the time it takes us to do things, and how well we write things, how well we send our emails, all of that starts to go down. Additionally, we start to get less engaged in tasks, and our fatigue continues to increase. We lose some of that engagement and that focus. So all of that tells us as our brain gets tired, we have to do something about that. So we've got a couple of things I'm just going to introduce you to early on, and then we'll keep going, but I'm going to pass on pretty quickly to in a little bit to Natalie. So one of the first things that we can do is rest, right? So we know that, for example, a good night's rest, really a part of that is helping to clear all those neurotoxins out of our brain and get us ready for the next day. In many countries, naps are a part of the culture, right? So a chance to kind of give our brains a rest. I would suspect that many of you do not have the opportunity to do a nap in the middle of the day. Maybe you do. If so, I'm glad for you, but many of us don't. So we may need other strategies besides just rest to help our brain recover and to get our energy up to make it through the end of the day. So rest isn't the only thing that you can do, but it is helpful, of course. But there are other ways to kind of help feed our brain and to keep our energy and focus going. One of the things we can do is uplifting emotions. I'm going to pause for a second if I can make this work. I don't know about you, but just seeing puppies play is something that helps me get a little bit of energy back, especially if they're your puppies, right? If you have a chance to, if for folks who are working at home have a chance to see their animals, be with their animals, it can be uplifting emotions, can be sharing a joke with a colleague. It can be just having a good laugh in the office. It can be taking a second to look at pictures of your family that increases your sense of joy. All of those are uplifting emotions that help bring you back energy during a time when your brain is feeling fatigued. So uplifting emotions are one of the things that feed the brain for energy, okay? So thinking about if you don't have time for a nap or even for a 10-minute period of meditation, you can intersperse uplifting emotions throughout your day, and that will help bring you energy as well. Another thing that helps feed our brain and bring us energy is motivation or meaning. So this is when we are able to connect what we are doing with our why. If I am doing certain work that feels mundane and unimportant, I'm going to feel more fatigued and more tired than if I am able to connect what I'm doing with something that's important to me, with a part of the motivation for why I come into work every day. And that's going to be true for the folks that you work with too. Sometimes we are doing things that are more fatiguing than others. For example, documentation is usually not everybody's favorite. But if I am able to see the why behind my documentation and how that is helping communicate with other folks who may be working with my families and helping to make sure that families don't have to share what's going on with them with everybody they interact with. And I know that communication is better because of my documentation, then I'm going to have more energy in doing that work. When I am able to stop and see the benefit of the work that I am doing with families, that brings me energy, that brings me motivation. And as supervisors, being able to help staff connect with their why in the work that they're doing will bring them energy and bring them motivation, even when they're having long and difficult days. So the last thing that we want to talk about in terms of kind of our brain challenges is fear. Many of you said this as being one of the challenges. So I'm going to stop and ask you, what draws your attention in this picture? Is it the beautiful colors of the flowers that are there? Probably not, probably not. we tend to focus in on things that make us worried, that scare us, right? So I'm hoping, thank you, that's right. Too small and way too many legs. All right, there you go. It's the things in our life that cause fear in us that tend to be where we put our focus, where our brain goes to. It draws our attention. I personally, spiders I'm actually okay with. I personally have a phobia around cockroaches. That's my thing. I can be in a room if I have seen a cockroach. If I don't know where it is, I can't be in that room anymore. It can be hidden somewhere. It has gone somewhere. I may never see it again. I need to leave at that moment because I am so focused on the fact that it is there. I admit it. It doesn't make sense, but that's where I am with cockroaches. But I know that cockroaches are not things that are going to do me harm, right? It's not a rational fear, but it still will draw all of my attention in a room in which there's a cockroach. However, how is my brain designed to see this picture, right? In this picture, I see the possibility of a bite of something that's going to charge my energy, at least for a short time, that I'm going to enjoy. I don't see this picture of donuts in a way that draws fear. However, chances are I'm going to be much greater likelihood of being harmed by these donuts than I am by a spider or a cockroach, right? But my brain doesn't see it that way. It is not designed to see it that way. It's designed to see the things that are fearful to me. Times when we are most vulnerable, we are particularly likely to focus on the things that are fearful to us. For example, my daughter had written an essay for school and she asked me to read over it. I don't know if you all have had that experience. It was such a good essay. She's a really good writer and she's really good at making like good arguments and things like that. She was in debate. She's just got a lot of skill in that. I read it all. I told her how wonderful I thought it was, that she was really good writer. And I made a couple of suggestions around some grammar areas that I thought she could improve. She did not hear any of the statements about what a good writer she was, right? Those did not sink in. What she heard is that she had made careless mistakes in her grammar. And that is what she took with her. That is where her focus went. Not because she didn't trust me or that she didn't actually sort of know that she had some skills at writing, but because our brain is really structured to rely on those things that make us feel negative, the biases that we have towards our own negativity. And where is our focus tend to be? So here is kind of a line that helps us think about our focus. When we are living in the world, hopefully we are in the present. That's kind of where we are. But where our brain ends up being, where our mind is generally in the past at times. And sometimes we're in the present, and then sometimes we're in the future, right? Our mind can be in all of these different places. When we're in the past, we're typically thinking about the things that have hurt us. We're thinking about the things that we regret from the past. When we are in the future, we're usually thinking about the things that concern us, things that we are fearing. That's kind of where our mind is focused in, just because of the way that our brain is set up. And what happens because of that is we tend to focus on the things that draw our attention away. So we may be worrying about that presentation that we have to do next week. And what if we really mess that up? And what if things fall apart and we don't know what to say? Or we may be thinking about the things that happened in the past to us, and will those things repeat? Will that person who I said that thing to that I didn't mean to say to, will they ever talk to me again? So all of those things that happen in the past and the future tend to draw our attention and drain our capacity for our brain to be focused. So I wanted to lay the stage. I'm going to pass it over to Natalie now, really lay the stage for sort of how our brain focuses by default, especially when we are not being intentional and just kind of letting it do its thing. With the recognition that now it's about how do we build that better model? Like how do we build our muscles to be stronger?
That's awesome, Molly. Thank you so much for that great introduction and really laying the foundation for what our brains are designed to do neurobiologically. I'm going to spend the remainder of our time this afternoon walking through specific behaviors and strategies and things that we can put into place that are very easy. Thank you for muting that individual. So let's start our time by just doing some grounding and acknowledging. We'll walk through an exercise called permission slips, and then we're going to walk through a few SMART resilience strategies around gratitude, mindful presence, and kindness. So I would invite you all right now to feel free to turn your cameras off, and we'll just take a moment to really get grounded in where we are. As you're watching this video, I'd like for you I would invite you to take a few deep breaths, notice where you're sitting, notice what's around you, notice what's happening on the screen. Every time I watch that, I just feel very relaxed afterwards. I might call that one of our novel moments, or a moment where we're doing something, or we're watching or viewing something we don't normally view, which provides just a little boost of oxytocin in our brain whenever we're feeling fatigued. So as I mentioned before, we're going to walk through a few strategies, and Molly started us off very nicely by just naming the fact that we are tired. As helpers, being a helper is already a tiring role and a tiring calling. And then when you throw in the pandemic and many, many other issues and things that we're dealing with across the world and globally, we're just tired. And so I think I thank you all for the opportunity to share some of the strategies that can kind of help us to begin the healing that needs to start. Our hope is that by just taking a few of these quick, easy tips and tools and exercises. This is going to equip you with some things to both support yourself, to support your teams, as well as the individuals that you all are serving. And I really like this quote by Leonard Cohen around compassion fatigue. Forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything, and that's how the light gets in. I've often heard and attended many trainings and listened to experts speak about compassion fatigue, speak about what's been different about our lives in relation to the pandemic, COVID-19. And I would also just wonder what we may have learned and are still learning, and how this might drive the work that we're doing and will continue to do. Perhaps there have been some learnings, and perhaps there have been some things that are different, some things that have changed or haven't changed that maybe have needed to change. And so I would invite us to just and think about that and consider that. And I love the work that Brene Brown has done in the area of emotional literacy, self-compassion, and leadership. And this is just a reminder about why this has been so hard for us, because our brains, we are neurobiologically hardwired for connection, and connection is what gives meaning to our lives. And so the fluctuation and the way that we've had to be innovative in how we connect with others and how we connect with those that we're leading and serving and supporting has looked a bit different, which one might imagine has put a lot of strain and fatigue on our brains, one of our most valuable organs in our bodies. So let's take a moment and let's do a brain dump. A brain dump is an opportunity for us to take 2 minutes to write down everything that's on your mind. So you may not have a Post-it note near you. You may not have a piece of paper. You may have your phone. Let's just take 2 minutes to write down non-judgmentally everything that's on our mind, everything that we're thinking about. And I'm going to turn my camera off and do the same, and we'll come back together in about 2 minutes. About 30 more seconds. Okay. Thank you all for doing that. I'm curious, and I'd love to see in the chat box what that was like for you. For me, it was very helpful. I have a lot going on, a lot of different projects, things going on with my family. And Post-it number 4, Sophia. Dr. Sood, who Molly and I were trained by for SMART, the stress management and resiliency training, would tell us that at any one time we have at least 150 tasks that are undone or that we still need to do. And I would say that those will never end. Some people think that the moment that they retire or walk away from a job or walk away from a position, that their to-do list will end. And I think that they don't end. We just have different tasks, right? This is a really helpful tool whenever you are definitely in a space where you're spinning and you just don't even know where to start. What I've noticed over time, because sometimes I'll even wake up at 3 a.m. and have a brain dump and write everything down so I can go back to sleep. It really, at first, my list started out as to-do list, grocery lists, things I had to do, tasks to complete. And over time, it's really shifted to be more of a to-be list and things I want to be, my dreams, my aspirations. So I would encourage you to think about that as a very easy self-care practice that's healthy for our brains, because we have all these files and folders filled with things and information that we have to process. So now let's just take a moment and we're going to write a permission slip. A permission slips are a great way to start building trust in a group and to start container building. So sharing this is something that maybe you could do with your teams. It's a helpful tool to identify what might get in your way of learning and practicing new ways of showing up. So I'd like for you to take about 45 seconds and answer these questions. What do you need to give yourself permission to do, feel, or not do to show up for this next 40 minutes or 35 minutes that we have together? Sometimes the first step in getting started is giving ourselves permission. A few examples could be stay open-minded, give yourself the time you need, make a list of questions, be a learner, not a knower. Take a few seconds for you to write your permission slip. Thank you for doing that. I would be curious if anyone would like to put in the chat box what they've given themselves permission to do, feel, or not do in order to show up for our time together when we walk through these SMART strategies. Mine is typically always be present. My head is usually 5 meetings ahead, 5 minutes ahead, and being present is a challenge for me from time to time. Belief it can happen, permission not to multitask, exhale, put your phone on do not disturb, turn your email notifications off, whatever that may be. Be my best friend. I love that, Lupe. So thank you for doing that. That's another very easy strategy to use in practicing self-care and self-compassion. So Dr. Sood also does a great deal of, we're going to walk through a few things with SMART, stress management and resiliency training. We're going to talk a bit about gratitude. Typically, from the moment that we wake up in the morning, before our eyes even open, our brain instantly goes to the open files. We instantly maybe turn our alarm off, look at our phone, see if we have any emails or texts. Very rarely do people actually just lay in bed for a moment, take a deep breath before they start their day. And so Dr. Sood has created this amazing practice called the morning gratitude practice. So we're going to experience this and then talk a bit about it. I would invite you to feel free to turn your camera off as we listen to Dr. Sood talk to us about the importance of morning gratitude.
Morning gratitude practice with Dr. Sood. Imagine you're waking up this morning. Give yourself a nice stretch. Gently close your eyes, making sure your eyelids are only lightly touching each other. Now, think about the first person in your life who you know cares about you. Recall this person's face. Think of at least one way this person has touched your life. And then send this person your silent gratitude. Now think about the second person. Go back to the first memory of this person. Then send your silent gratitude. Third person. Look into the eyes of this person and notice the color of the eyes. Then send your silent gratitude. Fourth person. Imagine this person is very happy wherever he or she is right now. And send your silent gratitude. Go back in time and look at yourself when you were 8 years old. Try to recall your hairstyle at that time. And then send a warm hello to your 8-year-old self. Think about someone who's passed away who you loved. Give that person a virtual hug. And then send a silent gratitude to that person. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. Give yourself a nice stretch again. I hope you have a wonderful day.
So Dr. Sood has done an extensive amount of research, probably at least 600 to 700 studies on the effects of practicing gratitude and being intentional about practicing gratitude. And his recommendation is to practice gratitude first thing in the morning before we even wake up. Oftentimes we are very grateful and we think about gratitude. We may have a thought in our head like, oh, I need to call this person and tell them thank you. I need to send them a letter or an email or text them. And being intentional about that can be very powerful. Starting your day with gratitude, having a gratitude journal. A couple of years ago, gratitude was my word for the year. And so each day at 11 a.m., my alarm would go off and I would stop what I was doing unless I was driving. And I would send a text of gratitude, write a note, handwrite a note, email, call someone. And it's amazing the oxytocin boost that I rewarded my brain with for the remainder of the day. Also, being intentional about it allowed me to connect with people that I had not been really intentional about connecting with, reestablish relationships. Was pretty powerful. So gratitude's very powerful. And what research would also tell us is that when we witness someone showing gratitude to someone else, not only does the person receiving the gratitude receive that oxytocin boost, but the person expressing the gratitude and then the individuals who witness that also receive that. Brene Brown has done an extensive amount of research in the leadership space. And one of my most favorite quotes from her is, "Who we are is how we lead." And each of us are designed to be leaders. A leader is anyone who finds the potential in people or processes and who works to develop that potential. That's every single one of us. It's every single one that you're leading and serving. And if we are leading from a space of gratitude and kindness and intentionality and understanding the importance of self-care, that's how we're going to lead our teams. Much like what Molly was saying earlier around things being contagious, calm is contagious, courage is contagious, gratitude is contagious, kindness is contagious. And so implementing some of these strategies can really can help you be the best version of yourself to lead. So I love this quote from Antonio Damasio as well. We're not thinking machines that feel, we're feeling machines that think. Oftentimes as helpers and as leaders, we make the connection that all behavior is communication. And when we're able to do that in a space of gratitude and understand that everything that we do is tied to a thought or an action, we can model that for them. And going back to the rest, uplifting emotions and motivation that Molly was talking about earlier, when we're feeling fatigued, living our purpose and understanding that is very important. Dr. Hall tells us that living your purpose is as important to your health as your blood sugar, cholesterol level, or blood pressure. So true when it's interconnected within our brains and our bodies as a whole. So gratitude is one way that we can develop skills to nurture our brain so that we can manage our stress. Kindness is another tool that Dr. Sood talks to us about in SMART. And the first step to cultivating kindness, including self-kindness, is understanding why we're so hard on ourselves. Excessive stress hurts every part of the body, particularly the brain. That's why we feel fatigued after 45 minutes. In the brain, stress weakens parts of the prefrontal cortex, the brain's kindness engine. So when we are fatigued, it's often even harder for us to be kind. So you can see why when we're stressed, we become judgmental of ourselves. We also become irrational and forgetful. No wonder many scientists believe that stress is a reversible neurodegenerative disorder. The word reversible is important. So we can build our our kindness muscle. The amygdala in the part of the brain is the limbic part of the brain that hosts fear and negative emotions. And when we talk about strategic kindness, there's a term we would say altruistic kindness. This is kind for the sake of kindness. It's hosted in the prefrontal cortex. The more stressed we are, the harder it is to be kind. And we have to be intentional about kindness in our lives, because this is really an important part of us healing and growing and taking care of ourselves. Interestingly enough, from the healing power of doing good, one of the most fascinating research findings to come out in recent years is that whenever a simple act of kindness is extended by a human being towards another, this results in a significant improvement in the functioning of the immune system and increased production of serotonin in both the recipient of the kindness as well as the person extending the kindness. So kindness is very, very important. So this brick wall kind of gives us an idea of kindness. If we mix sand, cement, and water, we create mortar that holds the bricks together. Mortar is what we have to make fresh every day. The number one trait that we look for in partners, whether that's a work partner, a partner for life, a partner for a sporting event, the number one trait that we look for in that other person is kindness. Why is this hard for us? Why is kindness often hard for us? Because sometimes when we are overly stressed, overworked, exhausted, our prefrontal cortex is not working the way that it should. So let's talk about a couple of strategies that we can use, or things that we can do to build our kindness muscles. I want to just share quickly that when Molly and I were working with Dr. Sood, we never were instructed for over 40 to 45 minutes at a time. And after the 40 to 45 minutes of time, often he would say, we're going to take a 10 to 15 minute break, and I'm going to go lay down and take a nap, or I'm going to go on a kind attention walk. So he truly lives what he is teaching and what his research is telling us. When we pay attention through kind attention practice, this is a simple, silent, and subtle practice. This sends a packet of energy to others that you get to keep, when we're thinking positively about someone. Two things that we know about every single person that we meet. Every single person that we meet is special and unique. And every single person that we meet is struggling with at least one thing. When we can assume that everyone is special and struggling, and we send them a silent good wish, I wish you well, I wish you love, I wish you hope, I wish you healing. That's one way we can practice kindness. A kind attention walk is where we are practicing this while we're walking. And we have one companion who walks with us all day long, and that's ourselves. We can find creative ways to be kind to ourselves by trying creative ways to be kind to others, people who are separated from us by time and space, which could include people that we think about in our morning gratitude practice. Kindness to others and kindness to self is one of the most powerful and simple healing practices for your mind as well as your body. It keeps your brain relaxed, which is conducive to better focus and creativity. So I'd like for us to just take a moment. We're not going to go for a walk, but I would invite us to turn your camera off for about 30 seconds and think about someone who you need to wish well, you need to wish hope, you need to wish healing on. And just close your eyes, think about that person, send them a silent good wish, a silent goodwill. Curious if anyone would like to share what that was like for them. This could be a teammate you were sending a silent good wish to. I sent a silent good wish to my youngest son, who has a sport event this afternoon, who I know is on the bus right now, sending him well wishes, thinking about him. So now let's talk a bit about self-kindness. We usually believe that we are the lowest bidder when it comes to self-worth. Sometimes we blame ourselves for our own misfortunes when we had nothing to do with it. And oftentimes we struggle inherently with our own self-worth, particularly during times when we are vulnerable and exhausted and tired. So an encouragement would be to enhance our self-worth, to really think about this. We think that self-kindness will lower our standards, and we must build self-kindness. 4 strategies that we can use when we think about self-kindness are to look at ourselves with the eyes of a person who loves us unconditionally. So thinking about someone who loves us unconditionally, it's probably for me, one of my dogs. How would that person or that animal look at me? Asking myself those questions. Valuing myself valuing yourselves by the principles of the people who serve you. Focus on your efforts and intentions, not the outcomes. Determine what your win will be and celebrate that. And relate with the people who help you feel worthy. Spend time around the people who you enjoy spending time with and who fill you up. And the 2 a.m. test, the 2 o'clock in the morning test would be, how many people can you call at 2 o'clock in the morning and not be judged by? So I'm going to say that again. How many people can you call at 2 o'clock in the morning and not be judged? Those are probably the people that you definitely would be able to practice self-kindness with and learn about kindness. So moving on to some things that we can do around self-kindness are just making better choices, being intentional about the choices that we make. 3 things that could really be detrimental to us being kind to ourselves are watching toxic news, having our notifications on our phone. Most of us do watch too much news, and there are studies that show that increases our blood pressure. The news is filled with information and stuff that raises our adrenaline levels, which which we have to combat that by being kind to ourselves and practicing gratitude through rest, uplifting emotions, or motivation. Prolonged sitting. If we sit too long, which a lot of us do that, especially in these days and times, we should get up and move every couple of hours. If you're unable to do that, you can do about 30 to 45 seconds of calf raises, and that will push enough blood up through your legs and into your brain to give you the nourishment that you need to move forward. And also mindless multitasking in the context of relationships. So when you're really with someone, talking to someone, are you truly with them? Are you thinking about what they're saying? Are you being kind to them? Are you present and in the moment? It's really important. And then, of course, thinking kind thoughts towards others helps you become kinder and physically stronger. We can build our kindness muscles by practicing meditations. Molly had mentioned earlier about sometimes meditation can be very helpful. I would encourage you to take a look or take a listen to different meditations that focus on kindness. Meditation on the breath or a neutral word may be relaxing, but can get boring after some time. When we can add an emotion to it, like kindness, it makes it more engaging and enjoyable. The morning gratitude practice is one of those that we can do. And our brain has the machinery for sadness as well as thriving. How we feel depends on which part of the brain we give the strongest workout. That control truly lies in our hands. Unfortunately, a lot of times we're not aware of the power that our brains hold and how we can intentionally change that. And I love this quote by Manoush Shafiq. In the past, jobs were about muscles. Now they're about the brains, but in the future, our jobs will be about the heart. And as leaders and as servants and helpers and healers, what are we doing to really nurture our own well-being? What are we doing to practice self-care and self-compassion? Because the people, the individuals that we're working with are our future. We are modeling what that should look like. And we are working with more heart-centered leaders and more people who are in touch with their emotional wellness and well-being. So now we've talked about kindness, we've talked about gratitude. Now we're going to talk for a moment about mindful presence. The brain notices what it finds of value, things that are interesting or things that are threatening. And over time, what's interesting and attractive loses its novelty, and you notice it less. This weakens our attention. Practicing mindful presence enables you to regain novelty and focus on what is truly important and meaningful, and that will strengthen your attention. Kind of like what Molly was mentioning about the walk with her husband in the evening. They usually talk about the same things, but to change up the topic and really be in the moment and be a bit more, have some more novel moments and novel conversations can help us build that muscle. One thing that we can do, a strategy that Dr. Sudas taught us, is the 2-minute rule. The 2-minute rule is spending at least 2 minutes with your family or friends at the end of each day. The trick is to treat them once you see them as if you haven't seen them for 30 days. Before you walk into your house or your home or wherever you are to see your friend or family, ask yourself, tell yourself, I'm going to meet some very special people who I have not seen for a month. Every day has been better for the last 6 years. So what this means is give at least 2 minutes of undivided attention to someone in your life who deserves that attention but isn't getting it. And during that 2 minutes, do not improve or change the other person in that time. So you come home from work, I see my child, and for 2 minutes, he has my undivided attention. I'm looking at in his eyes. I'm noticing his eyes. I'm letting him tell me about his day. And in the back of my mind, I may be thinking, does he have homework? What do I need to sign? Where do I need to take him? What are the updates? I need to cook dinner. Those thoughts have to be put to the back to give that individual or give whoever you're talking to 2 minutes of undivided attention. And I have to just share with you that that has been really a change agent in the relationships and within our home. Another practice is around noticing and mindful noticing. So taking a moment whenever we are feeling fatigued or tired to just sit back wherever we are and notice something that we haven't noticed before. The reason I have pictures of hands on the screen is I'd like for you to just take a look at one of your hands. You've had these hands your whole life, and you may not have ever looked at them for as long as we're going to look at them. I'd like for you to notice which finger is longest after your middle finger. Is it your ring finger? Is it your pointer finger? Our hands have been with us our entire lives, and sometimes we barely notice what's happening in the world around us, let alone our hands. And so the practice of committing to noticing one new thing each day is a way for us to really cultivate this behavior. Very helpful. Observe what's around you with a more engaged presence and a deeper sense of curiosity. I'd like to just spend, we talked a bit about gratitude, kindness, and mindful attention. I'd like to talk to you all a bit about self-compassion. Self-compassion is a different word than self-care. Self-compassion is when we feel like we deserve to take care of ourselves. And within that, my opinion is that personal development precedes professional development. If we don't truly know who we are and how to help ourselves and how to take care of ourselves and practice self-compassion and self-awareness, any professional development that we attend is not going to mean as much. And with self-compassion, this is when we give ourselves the same kindness and care that we would give to a good friend. Oftentimes, we're not as kind to ourselves as we are others. Dr. Kristen Neff has done a whole lot of work in the space of self-compassion, and she talks a lot about the difference between being kind to ourselves and judging ourselves versus understanding that there's a common humanity element to what we do as humans each day versus an isolation side of self-compassion, and mindfulness over identification. So self-kindness versus self-judgment. Self-compassion entails being warm and understanding towards ourselves when we suffer, fail, or feel inadequate, rather than ignoring our pain or flagellating ourselves with self-criticism. Self-compassionate people recognize that being imperfect, failing, and experiencing life's difficulties is inevitable. It's just part of who we are as humans. Common humanity versus isolation is where we think about self-compassion involving recognizing that suffering and personal inadequacy is part of the shared human experience. And mindfulness over identification. Mindfulness is a non-judgmental, receptive mind state in which one observes thoughts and feelings as they are without trying to suppress or deny them. So I would invite you, and I'll put this in the chat box for you, to take a look and explore this self-compassion scale. There's nothing better than data in my mind. And as we strive to take better care of ourselves, understanding where we currently sit and how we can take care of ourselves and how self-compassionate we are is a great first step for that. This is an example or a sampling of the score interpretation that you will get, as well as Kristen Neff's website that will take us to some next steps. So if I realize I'm not very self-compassionate, here are some strategies and some exercises that I can walk myself through as I strive to take better care of myself and pour into myself. One of my most favorite quotes with my team is, "I'm doing my pandemic best for now." Like, we are all doing the best that we can. This is really hard work right now. And I preface it with "for now," because who knows what's coming around the corner with a new variant or a new change or a new a new position or even a new role that we pick up in helping others. And Brene Brown would encourage us as we learned a lot about stress management and resiliency strategies, what happens to our brain, why our brain does what it does, and some things that we can implement. And we should continue to consider talking to ourselves like we would talk to someone that we love.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We appreciate your time. Our next Affinity group will be on April 6th.